Wilson's, the choice of champions. For more than 15 years, Bill Wilson has been at the forefront of competitive pistol shooting. First, as a champion masterclass competitor and an internationally recognized pistolsmith. Today, Wilson is known as the world's leading manufacturer of pistol parts and accessories for both competition and self-defense handguns. From the classic competition match trigger to the all-new Ultima Lube high-tech gun lubricants, Wilson's Gun Shop continues to be the leading innovator of quality parts and accessories for competition and self-defense handguns. Wilson's Gun Shop is dedicated to being the nation's #1 custom handgun and accessory company by not only offering the highest quality and service, but by providing you with the most complete selection of precision parts and accessories for all types of handgunning. Wilson's gunsmithing and competition-proven auto pistol accessories have been used by champions for more than 15 years and continue to be so, as they were an integral part of the pistol used by Jerry Barnhart in his winning bid for the 1992 USPSA National Championship.
The gun is probably the easiest gun I've ever had to shoot. It feels like a shooting itself, and I'm just standing there holding it. I really like the gun. As usual, Wilson did a good job as far as putting it together. It's super accurate, it's reliable. It does exactly what it's supposed to do.
The Wilson Combat Shock Buff has been a standard of champion competition shooters for more than 10 years. Its performance has been competition proven, as over 600,000 units have been sold. The original Wilson Combat Shock Buff is still the best, and the new Shock Buff recoil systems are designed to improve functioning, accuracy, safety, and of course, to extend the life of your gun by absorbing some of the pounding from heavier loads. The Wilson Combat Guide Rods and the patented Group Gripper Kits improve accuracy of stock barrels by forcing the rear of the barrel up into the locking lugs of the slide under heavy spring tension. 8 different models are available to help you get the most accuracy and reliability with your handgun. Wilson's manufactures a complete line of high-quality auto pistol sights, from the original #3 Wilson Combat High Visibility Combat Sights to the new #367T Night Eyes Tritium Insert Night Sights, incorporating the famous 3-dot sight picture, which is ideal for shooting in low light conditions. And when it comes to competition auto pistol accessories, there's no match to Wilson's quality and selection. Wilson's rounds out its line of parts and accessories with the highest quality barrels and compensator kits available, and a complete selection of Series 47 advanced pistol magazines. These items adhere to the most stringent tolerances in the industry. As American Handgunner magazine says, Wilson's parts and accessories are matched only by the quality and beauty of the pistols produced by the master craftsmen at Wilson's Gun Shop. Exacting attention to detail is what sets a Wilson Combat pistol apart, from the precisely hand-cut metal checkering to the exquisitely hand-polished finish. Every facet of a gun destined to wear the proud hallmark of Wilson Combat is brought to the highest level of perfection. It's not just the flawless cosmetics either. Inside the heart of a Wilson Combat pistol, you'll find the same dedication to detail. The slide-to-frame fit is meticulously matched for maximum accuracy and reliability. The trigger action is perfected with the most advanced Wilson Combat components and then honed with skilled hands for a light, crisp let-off. And the match-grade Wilson barrel is precisely hand-fitted for X-ring accuracy. Wilson's custom handguns are the standard by which all others are measured. The highest quality parts, the most innovative designs, and the best service in the industry. Quality. It's not just a concept, it's a way of life at Wilson's, the choice of champions.
This is the Colt Series 80 Combat Commander model. I'm going to start off with just taking the grip screws off of it right now. And from there we'll go on to the next step. After the grips are removed, we go ahead and remove the slide from the gun. Then we go ahead and take all the internal mechanisms out of the slide, firing pin stop, and so on.
Now you're taking these out because of, you just want to go ahead and break the gun down?
Just go ahead and totally break it down, yeah. Because these will all be worked on in a later stage, all these parts.
And once you take them all apart, you can keep them all in a bag or?
We most usually have a job box like this that we keep them in, and just, we're not really organized in there as much as they are just kept intact with the gun. Extractor. That's more or less the finished slide there, and it's ready for someone else to take over. And then we start with the frame itself, taking all the mechanisms off of it. Safety.
That's a punch there, right?
Yes, it's punched. Just take the pin out of the mainspring housing there. Beaver tails removed. Mainspring. Then all the trigger mechanisms are removed. Taking those two pins out. And then we move the trigger. Manner such as that. Then the ejector is removed. Kind of got to work it back and forth a little bit. Stair step it. And that's fully disassembled. I'm ready for the next step. Okay, here the next step we'll be performing at the vise, and I'll be using a Fordham Dremel tool, and I'll be using a coarse polishing point, which I'll be working on the feed ramp with. And what I'm trying to do here is establish a smooth feed ramp so that the bullet will feed up into the barrel efficiently. I'll start on that now.
How long something like this usually takes, Jeff?
Oh, it's not that time consuming. It depends on what shape the frame is itself, and the feed ramp depends on what shape it comes in. And if it's rough, you might have to go ahead and take a coarser action and use some sanding bits or whatever on it, or it could come down to using a file in order to get all the...
Really?
Been finding lots of clean ones here lately, so it's been good.
So how smooth do you want it to be?
You want it to be just close to mirror finish on it. You want it to be really, really, really nice. No tool marks or nicks inside the feed ramp itself.
So you're really not trying to...
We're not trying to, not unless that is called for. Sometimes they're real shallow inside the frame and not deep enough, and you have to go ahead and take a little off in order to get it to look uniform and function right.
Back to me one back out a little bit.
So that's a good start right there. And from this point, I just go ahead and remove the coarse polishing point and work with a medium grit polishing point.
Okay.
Just take it down from different stages on down to the smooth finish, which is what we desire. What we're doing is just staying with the same angle that we have, and not taking it any deeper or making it a more steep face which the bullet will contact. We're just keeping it the same. At this point, you can see where it's really starting to come into looking like it should. This step always seems to make it more defined. Just got to kind of finesse it around in there and get it to looking the way you want it.
How much pressure are you applying?
Not very much at all. It's real, real light. You let the tool mostly do all the work, not force it in any way. Just take it around and make sure you hit all of the surface that needs to be. You come out to the rim of the frame there, polish it up. That you don't want to take any away from the front of the frame here where it sets going into the barrel itself, or otherwise you'll have the barrel hanging out into the feed ramp and it won't work at all that way. You're gonna have a messed up gun.
I guess once you start digging into the frame, there's no return.
Drastic measures are called for.
Where are we at now?
I'm going to this is what I call a bright boy, and it's what gives it the really, really good shine. Right at this is the last step.
You can basically use any Dremel tool in this.
Yeah, handheld Dremel tool will work just fine. You can apply more pressure with this to get a brighter shine on the feed ramp.
Okay, so what do you got? How's it look?
Looks pretty good. And at the end of it, you just want to make sure that you go back and inspect and make sure there's not any tool marks left or nicks and cuts in any way. And I believe that one's ready to go. Looks pretty uniform.
So now that's polished and ready for the next step. What's the next step?
Next step from here, I'll turn it over to a fellow employee of mine. He'll go ahead and take over from here.
Okay, what we're going to do here is I got two barrels here. I got one of them is a Wilson 45 match grade barrel for Commander, and the other one is just the stock barrel that come out of this gun. And what we're going to do is we're going to throat the barrel here to where so the round will feed up in that chamber real good. On this particular gun, we're going to fit the Wilson barrel, but I'm going to show you how to throat the stock barrel. It's more, we do a lot of that too here, but you can see the difference here in these two barrels. They're a lot alike, but there's some things that, if you notice here on the Wilson, it's opened up quite a bit more on each side coming up around here than the stock barrel. And also,
What's the purpose of throating? What does that help?
well, it gets rid of that little edge in there. You get that all smooth, get the tool marks out. Also, there's a real prominent little sharp edge right there that a lot of the times it'll keep that round from actually going up in the chamber.
So that'll catch on the breath.
Right, and if you can get rid of that, not real radically, but if you can just smooth that over to where that really flows in that chamber, well, it'll feed real good.
So it increases reliability.
Right, really does. Another thing you need to watch when you're throating a barrel, whether it's one of ours or the stock barrel, is first, before you do anything, you want to put it up in there, and from the feed ramp to the face of the barrel here, you want a 1/32 clearance. You don't want it even, and you don't want it overhanging into the feed ramp, because that, no matter how good you throat it, it's going to hang up every time. So you want to make sure.
1/32.
Right. Now, if it is, overhanging, or it's right on the feed ramp there, where you need to get it in a vise and face it back a little bit, face it a little bit and put it back in there and check it. You don't want any more than that. You can go a little more, but that's about the minimum.
What we've got there, piece of rubber?
Yeah, just cork vise jaws or rubber, anything to protect it from crushing it. Now, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just open that up a little more on each side, just give it a little more clearance. Not very much, there's not a whole lot. This is a pretty good barrel here. I'm just going to bring it up a little more before I do anything.
What kind of tool are you using?
We're just using the Fordham again, a little grinding tool with a real small stone. Just, it needs to be real good and parallel and round. Just enough to bring that up on both sides. You just pretty much want to follow what's there. No real drastic changes. You don't want to get too far down in the chamber. You don't want to get out here to where you lose what Colt's already put there. Not very much, just enough. Not very much, just enough to take some metal off. That's about it. I'm not forcing it hardly at all.
And of course, you want to keep it even all around.
Right. I want both sides even, and I want it, I want to keep that line in there on that throat. I don't want to deviate from that. Now just even it all up. Okay. Now it doesn't look like we did much, but we just got both sides even, opened it up a little more. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to, that little sharp edge I was talking about right in there, from this angle going straight into the chamber, I'm just going to slightly break that edge and just get it from being a sharp edge to, semi-rounded, semi-radius.
And what kind of tool is that?
That's just it's just a little three-sided sharp scraper. It's really sharp, and it's just going to be able to get in there and do some scratching around to be able to get that off of there. It's pretty hard stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and just scrape a little bit. You don't want to just really take a lot off, but you want to stay even, and you want to basically just break that edge. We're going to do some more polishing later that'll take care of any more that we need.
That just kind of cuts that metal right off.
Right. It does a pretty good job. You just want to blend it in as much as you can.
It's not taking it down a whole lot, but
No, not very much. Just getting a few curls out of there. I'm just going to go ahead down here on this flat, and it'll be easier if I take the bigger tool marks out now to polish it up later. Again, the slower you take it, the better off you'll be. You won't take too much off, because that's not good. Okay. Now, got that pretty even all the way around. I'm going to take a polishing point. First, I'm going to take a coarser one that's a little quicker, and it'll get rid of some of those big tool marks in there. And they're not really that big. It's a pretty good barrel there.
so this is the coarse polishing point?
Right, it's pretty coarse. It cuts pretty good, and you don't put a whole lot of pressure on it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get in there, and what I've scraped in the throat there and on down this, I'm going to just follow that and just burnish that down. Just polish it down. Just bringing it down with that angle that's already there. Yeah, you don't want to go too deep in the chamber and start, getting in there, because that's going to make some marks in there you don't want to have, especially on a match grade barrel. You don't want to be doing that, because your tolerances, the manufacturer's kept pretty close. And you don't have to put a lot of pressure in there either. You're just shining it up, getting it slick, and taking tool marks out. Okay, I'm going to switch over to a finer polishing point for the final polish up on this.
And once again, you're really trying just to polish the
Right.
part that you worked on.
Right, I'm running a little bit faster to get a little more shine, and I'm staying right where I was with pretty much all the rest of the tools.
Now that edge is basically going
Right, it's pretty good and rounded, and I'm just shining it up to where even if it gets some powder residue after shooting for a while, it'll still be slick enough to feed. You won't catch that throat in the barrel.
So the shine helps probably keep down some of that powder.
Right.
A nothing for it to catch on to. Set it up there a little bit.
Yeah. Tool marks I'm having trouble getting out. Whoop. Be careful of that too. Looking better.
How do you know when it's done?
Well, when I get it all flowing in together and get all the tool marks out, get it all shiny, we'll call it good. And two, this is something that, you know, probably everybody should have done, or, you know, it just helps reliability and helps feed different types of ammunition. A lot of times if a stock gun will feed one, it usually won't feed too many others. Now, you see it's all, they're all shined up, polished up, it's pretty slick. The little sharp edge is long gone, the tool marks are out, and should feed pretty good. And then you always want to take it back out, make sure that, just put it back in the frame and take a look at it.
So it matches up.
Yep, you see how she looks, make sure you maintain your gap from the feed ramp to the barrel. You got to be in pretty good shape.
A little different focus, Jay. So that's what it's supposed to look like, and it's all polished all around,
Yep.
and no tool marks.
Got your feed ramp polished, got your barrel throated and polished, and should feed real good. Okay, what we're going to do here is we're going to talk about ejection port work, talk about lowering it, talking about ferreting it back. Most of the newer Colts, 80 series, and pretty much all the different models, they're already lowered. Some of them are already ferreted back, like this Commander, and the Gold Cups are usually always ferreted back a little bit from the Colt factory. But this government model here, it's lowered, but it's not ferreted back. We're going to show you how to ferret this back. These 80 series, like this Commander and this government model here, what I mean by already lowered is from the bottom of the slide rail to the bottom of the ejection port, we like to have that be somewhere in the range of a ½ inch or 500 thousandths. So being these are already lowered, we won't be doing any lowering, but your 70 series and your other manufacturers, they may tend to be a little higher. And the reason we lower those is most people today are hand loading, and when you open those up a little bit, the brass gets out. You don't want it, you know, bending the brass, and so you can reload them, and also just for ejection reasons, just so the gun will cycle and operate correctly.
No reliability.
Yeah, right. So what we're going to do is I'm going to ferret this back, just cut a little relief in here to where when that slide cycles and that brass pops out, it's going to have clearance to get out of there and not jam up in between when it goes back into battery, hit behind the barrel and the part of the slide right here. Also, it's going to help from bending the brass when
Now,
it
is
comes
that
out.
already lowered proper?
Right, this is already lowered
Are you
here.
measuring this like
Right, yeah. In fact, this one's under, which is fine. On scope mount guns we do too. We lower them even a little more just for extra, because sometimes you got a scope mount hanging out up here, bottom of the mount, and on scope guns we lower them an extra 100 thousandths. So it ends
About
up
the
being,
lowest you can go, that would be
yeah, to be safe on the strength of the slide right here, we go ahead and ferret them back and we lower them down another 100 thousandths. But on just a standard gun like this with no scope, just a ½ inch right in there will be fine. So I'm going to put this in the vise, and we're going to ferret it back. I've also got some safety glasses on, which is always a good idea when you're doing some grinding.
What kind of tool are you going to be working with?
Now we're going to use the Fordham again. We're going to use a little bigger stone this time. And
And you can do this with almost any drill tool, right?
yeah, this is a 1/2 inch, I believe a 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch coarse grinding stone. And just coarse so we can get a lot of metal out of the way pretty quick, and we'll clean it up later. So basically all I'm going to do here is I'm going to find me an angle here and eyeball this cut and try to stay the middle of this cut to be right on this line right here coming back. So when I get started, I think you'll probably see kind of what I'm doing here. You know, you want to hold this real good because when you get down in there, it'll tend to want to run out across the slide. Also, when you're doing this, you want to, some of these are thicker than others down in here. This one's not very thick. You want to look down in here and make sure you don't get too much into the breech face. In fact, you don't want to get any into it. Just kind of keep it moving, take a little bit at a time.
Through it.
No, right. Just kind of a kind of a teardrop type of shape. And it doesn't have to be a great big cut. You can vary the length on it, I mean, however big you want yours to be, or that right there is probably plenty. Like I said, when that brass comes out of there, it's got a place to go. It's not tempted to get hung up in there.
So really, that's just an eyeball.
Right,
operation.
right. You can make it a little longer. We like to keep them all, you know, pretty much the same looking aesthetics of the gun. You can do a lot, you know, deburring the edges of this around here, sharp corners, get rid of those sharp corners for holster, and also for just handling of the gun. You know, you don't want a whole lot of sharp, snaggy edges, especially shooting competition. Okay, we're back here at the workbench. Just got done ferring this port back here. And what we're going to do now is we're going to take and just clean up the tool marks in there. It looks pretty uniform, but there's a lot of tool marks in there from that stone, and especially if you metal oil slide like this, it's really going to show up, and we just need to get that smoothed out. It doesn't have to be, you know, quite as smooth as something like a feed ramp or anything like that, but you want to get it smoothed out, get some sharp edges off this feed ramp here, or off this ejection port. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this coarse half-round file, and the reason I'm using a coarse one is because it cuts the best, and you need to just get in there and see what it'll do, and just follow the lines basically of what you've got there, and you'll be able to see once you start filing what kind of marks you're making and where you're going. Take it easy.
And you're just anchoring the gun.
Right. I come back to the workbench here so I can you know, hold on to it and get a good grip on it to file here, and you can pretty much see what you're doing once you get started. You can alter the shape of it or the length a little bit, however you want. But I do most of my shaping with the stone, and then just come in and take out tool marks with the file. I'm using pretty good pressure here. Usually these slides are kind of hard. My file's kind of worn also. I'm just staying with what we've already got. Stop and look at it every once in a while, see if it's what you want it to look like. Sometimes these slides vary in hardness, so you might have a little trouble doing what you want to do in here.
Is that from manufacturer or gun to gun?
It varies pretty much from gun to gun, also manufacturer to manufacturer. A lot of the times, Colts don't vary quite as much from gun to gun, but a lot of times you'll get slides from other manufacturers that are pretty hard and or pretty soft. A lot of times you can tell that more when you tighten the slide and do work like that. Now, you see this little part right here. It's been chamfered a little bit from the factory, but I think we can probably get a little more off of that. And again, you can do as little or as much as you want. I'm going to flatten it off and chamfer it pretty good.
How coarse is that grill?
This is fairly fine. It's a number 2 cut, a wide pillar file. And then also, I'm going to get a fine half-round file here, and there's a pretty good edge right there all the way around. So I'm going to go ahead and just break that, so it's not so razor. A lot of them are pretty razor sharp. Just break
when
it.
it's blue like that, you can really see the work you're doing. Almost.
Yeah, true. Yeah. I usually do a lot more breaking of an edge right there because of the holster. You get the gun in the holster, it'll tend to grab on that. This gun here, the bottom of the ejection port's fairly straight. It's not wavy very much. It's not real high. And sometimes when I get that, I'll just get this pillar file again that's fairly flat and just flatten it up, you know. Usually they're higher over here. And we can just take that down a little bit, take a look at it, even it up. Okay. Go in here and kind of help that out a little bit.
So you're knocking it down a little bit?
Right. This little curved radius right in here, after I flattened that down, it dropped that down below that level, so I'm just going to get rid of that, make it blend in a little more. Also over here, this slide top's been shredded. There's a pretty good little machined burr right there. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. And again, there may be some Colt tool marks in here on this little flat. If you don't like them, we'll just get in there with a good fine file and get rid of them.
Shines up pretty easy, huh?
Yeah. Usually tool marks in there aren't too bad. And then, once you got your edges broke around here, how much ever you want, you remember I did some filing in there. I'm going to get some coarse polishing paper. I believe this is, I think this is 120 grit. And got it wrapped around a dowel that's about the size of that, to where it'll fit down in that little concave area and kind of polish that out a little more. Get my file marks out of it. Just, again, staying with what I've already got there. I'm not altering the shape any. you got it pretty good with that paper. I usually go to some real fine
Just to polish
paper, yeah, just to get it right down to when you look at it, you see a relief there. You don't see a bunch of tool marks. Go back to my course again here real quick. And again, as you're doing this, you'll be able to find your angle where and see what you're doing at the same time. And then all these little edges around here that we just broke, where you can take your paper and go around on those and kind of get rid of the roughness. So they're good and smooth. And that's pretty much what you want. You got your edges broke all around here. Pretty snag free back here. Again, our slide was already lowered. We just evened it up a little bit, faired it back, polished all those tool and file marks out. And that's what it ought to look like. Ought to give you a good reliable ejection and a good shooting gun. Shouldn't bend your brass.
And where do we go from here?
Okay, what we're going to show you now is we're going to talk about polishing and adjusting the extractor, and that's it's fairly a simple operation, but it has a lot to do with reliability of the gun and proper extraction, and also helps when you get the case out of there properly, it helps to properly eject it.
This is a fairly important operation.
Right, it is, and if you have a gunsmith do it or you do it yourself, like I said, even if you have a gunsmith do it, it's usually a relatively inexpensive operation. And it plays a lot in reliability. Even just a stock gun out of the box usually doesn't have enough tension, and if it does, it's probably too much. And some of the angles in the extractor hook and area there are usually not smooth. A lot of edges for the case rim to be jumping on and things like that. So this particular extractor right here is just a stock Colt out of the gun. It's not had anything done to it. As you can see, if you can see that right there, it's not a sharp edge, but it's not very radius, not very round. And the way the extractor works is reviewing the slide this way, this being the muzzle and this being the back. As the extractor sits in the slide, the case is in the magazine, and when it goes to feed up underneath there, it's at a slight angle. It needs to be able to slip up underneath there and come straight in the gun as it goes in the chamber. Now, if you notice right here, again, I said there's no radius there. It's a pretty sharp angle right here. We're going to have to relieve a little bit of that right there. Not a lot, just smooth that down to where that flows, to where that extractor can slip up underneath there rather than snap or stop and not slip up underneath there. It needs to slip up underneath there with some tension and smooth, so it engages the extractor groove in the case rim underneath the hook of the extractor.
You got a little ledge there that you want to
take right. Here's an extractor that obviously somebody's done too much. You can see the difference here, maybe on a side view, where you got this little bit of material here, and they've taken it almost completely off. And probably the case here was that obviously they took too much, but you want to take a little bit of that off, because if you don't, once you get over to the vise and start bending the extractor to get some tension on the case, if you don't get rid of that, you're going to bend it and bend it and bend it and never get anything, because that rests on the inside cut of the slide, that channel that extractor fits in, and it's never going to get up to your case. So you need to take a little bit of it off, but obviously not that much.
Show us
You
the
don't
side
need-
angle of that. Just the
Okay.
other way, the other side. There you go. That'll work. Perfect.
You can see they've taken a considerable amount off there, more than needed.
Filed down too
Right. It's almost flat. And so what you want to do is take a little bit of that off, a few swipes of the file, and if you need to, stick it in your, stick it in the slide and see if you can look in there and see if it's catching or not. I'd say to estimate, 5 to 7 thousandths maybe. Sounds like a lot, but it's really not very much. Another thing you're going to want to do is this little flat area right here, up in there. You don't want to change the angle any. All we're going to do, if we do anything to that, is we're going to keep that flat. Keep that 90 degrees in there. You shouldn't need to bring that forward any, and you shouldn't need to alter this way or this way any. You just need to keep it flat and keep that 90 degree right in there. Because that case rim has got a 90 degree right on the just inside the extractor groove there. So you want to keep that. Another thing we're going to do is, like I mentioned earlier, we're going to radius this slightly so the rim can slide up underneath there over that. We're going to relieve this area right here just ever so slightly. For instance, here's an extractor that's properly adjusted in that area. If you can see that, see
the
this
side view again.
sharper angle here.
There you go.
And you can see we've radiused that a little bit with the file to where that case rim will slide over that.
And these are all factory parts, right?
Right. These here that I have here are factory parts.
You've worked on.
Right. Then also we've relieved this right here a little bit. Again, it's going to give you that clearance when that case is at an angle to sweep up in there. It's going to give it just a little bit so it doesn't have to fight getting up underneath there. And again, you can go too much there. You don't want to do too much. Here's one, obviously, that's way too much. It really altered that quite a bit. It will probably work. I wouldn't bet on it. If it works now, it will probably give you trouble later. You get some
Just from what?
firing residue caked in there, it might give you a lot of trouble. But whether it does or doesn't, you don't need to do that much. It doesn't need quite that much. Also, they've altered this angle right here. It's kind of at a slant.
Yeah.
Need to keep that right straight across.
More 90 degrees.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Or-
Shouldn't be any problem with adjusting a Colt extractor if it, if it looks pretty good and it's not, any bad tool marks or anything like that. But the Wilson extractor here, we like to keep tolerances a little bit tighter on it compared to your stock part. This little area right here, we keep it pretty much. Chances are you won't have to do anything to that. If you do, it will be very little, less than you would have to do to a Colt extractor. Also, we've slightly radiused this in here already. This angle in here should be good and flat, low enough to get plenty of case rim engagement in there. This angle's good and straight across here. The only thing that you would probably have to do is, like we talked about earlier, is relieving that just slightly in there, getting a small square file in there. And what I usually do is when I get one of our Wilson extractors is I'll go ahead and just lightly with the file just take the blue off that and get it slick. I won't take any metal off, I'll just take some blue off and then slightly get in there and relieve that just a little bit.
Let's compare it with the stock
Right.
Colt.
As you can see, it's pretty much the same except for the relief right there for the case to slide up out of the magazine underneath. And then the only other thing you might have to check is hold it up and just look through there. And what you're looking for, we want a little bit of daylight between the top of this hook where it bottoms out inside the extractor groove. If it's touching the case, it's not the proper way to have it. And if it's touching the case, you just take a file and just slightly take a little bit of that down. Don't change the angle any at all. Just take that down, hold it back up. Make sure you get any clearance at all, will be fine. But you want the rim of this to set down in that flat groove.
See the stock Colt compared to
Okay.
the Wilson. Compare that now with the Wilson, the stock one without any work done on it.
Okay, it's pretty much, you shouldn't have to take any off the top of here. It's plenty low. In fact, if you did any, you might run into where there's hardly any hook there at all. And if that's the case, you'd want to lower this right here a little bit and keep checking. And lower it flat down. Don't lower it some up here and not enough back here, or vice versa. You want to keep it all the way across there without changing the angle, bringing that hook forward. Because if you thin out your hook too much, after a while that hook may just break off. It could, possibly. So you want to keep the thickness there. Keep it flat here. And you can take it down a little bit. That's not going to hurt anything. But again, if you take that down, you might run into the problem where it will start hitting up here too, so keep watching both. It's real important. But again, the Wilson extractor, it's got a lot of that already done. And also notice something here on the back. This Colt's already done, but usually those are square edges right along there, like back here all the way out to the front. Those are already chamfered just to help ease in and out installation of the extractor, putting it in and out, so it doesn't hang up inside the bore.
And that's like that right out of the bag.
Right,
Wilson.
right. Both sides are chamfered out there.
Yep.
Okay, one of the first things you need to do before you polish and adjust the extractor is you put it in the slide. We're going to see if it's got any tension at all or if it's got too much. It may have too much. Put the extractor in just loose, nothing in the slide, no firing pin or 80 series safety parts. Slide it in. Just by feeling this one, I can tell it probably doesn't have any. It slides in and out pretty easy. And take your firing pin stop, get it lined up. Just slide that in there to hold that extractor where it's going to be in the gun when it's all assembled. Take a dummy round, whatever caliber your gun happens to be. This one's a .45. And if you can reach in there and just push it underneath, I can feel right now that it has none at all. It just falls right out. So obviously it needs some tension on it, needs some work.
So if it was properly adjusted, that round would
Right,
stick
if it was properly adjusted, it would slide underneath the hook smooth, in and out relatively smooth, not hanging up on anything. And you would be able to, once you got it slid underneath there, you could turn your slide any direction and it should stay in there. Upright, upside down, anything. It shouldn't move.
Hang on to
Right,
it.
it's going to hold on to it to pull it out of the case after it's fired, or pull it out of the chamber after it's fired. But this one definitely needs some tension on it, needs some work, which most all of them do. So, next thing we're going to do is we're going to polish and adjust the extractor to where we can get some tension on the case for proper extraction and ejection. Most stock guns have either no tension or too much tension. So what we're going to do is we're going to file some little different angles on here, clean this extractor hook up, take some metal off, and show you how to get it right. Now, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take off some metal right here on this little radius. There's quite a bit of metal there. But that's going to prevent the extractor, after we get it tensioned, from hitting the case. So we're going to remove some metal to where we can get some tension on the case. That's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm not going to remove a whole lot, but we're just going to get it down a little bit.
rounding it over.
Yeah,
Trying to
just
keep the same shape.
right, staying with what we've got, but we're just moving down. 9 times out of 10, if you get everything else done right and you put your extractor in, you still, after you've slightly bent this and putting tension on it, you still don't have any tension. You've still got too much metal there. That'll fool you a lot of times. Okay, that probably ought to be enough. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to take this small square file and we're going to clean up this flat in here. We're going to try to get it flush and flat. It looks pretty flat right now, and get out any tool marks and just make it level. make it smooth for that case rim to slide in and out on. You don't want to take off too much. You want to just, you can kind of look at it, see if it's level or not.
So you're kind of making a 90-degree angle?
Right. And it looks pretty good. The next thing is this little bevel right here, where that when the case feeds up out of the magazine, it needs to be able to slip over that relatively easy, smooth. So we're just going to radius. It's pretty much a square cut right now in relationship to the flat end here and the side of the extractor. So we're just going to radius that a little bit so it doesn't have such an erratic jump. And again, you don't want to do too much here. You just want to keep it even. Keep it smooth. You don't want to get too much over this way. And all the way up and down there, you want to keep it pretty much the same. All right. You don't want to get into this area up here. We're going to do something a little different right there later. But you don't want to get up in there and really, round the top of this part off or get down any end of there. You just want to keep it right now. You want to keep it pretty much parallel with the side of the extractor. You can have a real good polished and adjusted extractor, but if your hook area there is messed up or not done right, it just won't catch the case properly coming up out of the magazine. Now, next thing, we're going to put a little bit of a hook on here. You can see that right in there.
Just hold it still on this side.
It's pretty square right in there.
Yeah.
And we're going to slightly, ever so slightly in relation to everything else, put a little bit of a hook in there and relieve this a little bit right there on that hook on the inside, to where when that case feeds up out of the magazine, it's got something to flow into the extractor notch with a little bit of clearance.
Okay, so what tool are you using there?
This is just a real narrow needle file. I believe this is a number 2 cut. It's kind of coarse, but it's kind of in between coarse and fine. And I'm not doing a whole lot this way. I'm doing it more this way. Just kind of curving around toward the outside of the point of the extractor.
Just on the one upper edge there?
Right.
So not on the whole face?
Yeah, I'm not doing anything right down here on what we just radiused. I'm up inside the hook itself. And again, you don't want to do too much. You just want to get a little bit relieved there. And take a look at it every once in a while and see that you're where you're going. See, you're not doing too much, because it's easy to do. It's really easy to do. That ought to be about good.
Show us exactly what you turn it over to the other camera up top. What do you try to do there?
Well, if you remember, that was straight right through there. Now we've got a little bit of an angle on it, about the angle that lies with my file right there. Instead of being flush and square, it's a little more out this way, very slightly down.
Just on that top edge?
Right. And if you position your extractor, think about it when it's in the slide like that, your cases are going to be feeding up, so it needs a little bit of relief to get in there, to get up into that notch and under that hook.
Oh, so that's the object.
Right. So all I'm going to do now is, after we've made this little cut right here, I'm just going to clean it up a little bit and also let it flow down with that radius there where the case lip feeds onto that.
This is just a finer bit.
Right. It's just, we're back to that fine square file again. And again, just keeping everything with that radius and the angle in this way. Yeah, I didn't do anything to change the 90-degree angle here. All I did was radius that over so it's a smoother jump onto that flat. And there's not a lot done there. There's not very much done at all.
So you haven't really cut underneath
No.
the hook itself?
No,
You cut
I've
just
not.
Radius
I've
that
just
angle-
kind of radiused that corner out, you might say, a little bit to where it's not so sharp and it's not so abrupt of an angle right there. Just
And what that
relieve
is,
it a
in
little
fact,
bit.
is the lower edge of the extractor
Right.
as it fits into
Right, as it is
fits into the
positioned
slide.
in the slide, right,
And that's what comes into contact with the round first.
right. I'm just kind of cleaning that up a little bit. Okay, that looks pretty good. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take a dummy round. And you always want to use a dummy round for something like this. You're going to be putting it in the slide. Prevents a lot of accidents. But I'm going to hold this up. Now I'm going to make sure that the inside of the case area right here, on the head and the lip right there, is not going to hit on top of that. Want a little bit of clearance there. All we want to ride is that case head lip riding right in that notch right there. Okay, what I'm looking for is light between the case and that little top edge right there. And if there is some, that should be plenty because it's not going to go any lower. We want that extractor to keep tension on that rim of that case right there.
But you don't want it to be all the way touching.
Right, no. If it's touching, just lightly foul that off, just foul it off square and flush and check it again. That one looks like it'll be okay. Okay. Next thing we're going to do, this little area right here, it's not a sharp corner. It's got a little bit of a radius to it. We're going to slightly radius it just a little bit more to keep it out of the way, again, for that case coming up in that extractor hook. I'm not going to do near as much to this one as I would another one that would be a real sharp corner there. I'm just going to really slightly just run that over. Basically just cleaning it up more than I'm taking any off or changing any angle. You can see that. Turn it a little bit this way maybe. You can see it's a little more rounded over here than it is over here.
Just a slight.
Right. Again, your case is coming up in this way and you don't want anything hanging up on it. Okay. Now the next thing is we need to go to the vise, and we'll show you how to bend this in certain little points to get the tension on the extractor before we put it in the slide and check it with the dummy round, sliding it underneath that extractor hook.
Now, Chris, this seems to be like a very important part of tuning and reliability for the gun. This part you just did.
Yeah, if you get too much extractor tension, it's not going to extract and eject right, and if you don't get enough, when your gun opens up, comes out of battery, your case may fall out from underneath it before it ever really gets pulled out and in the proper position to be ejected out. So it's a pretty critical point. It needs to be right.
Now, the relationship between the filing and of the part now and the bending of the part, how does that come into play? Actually, with the bending, what's more important?
I'd say they're both just as important because one, you're getting your angles correct to accept the case as it comes up into the hook and the hook area, and then the bending is going to give you the tension on the case once this is inserted in the slide. Okay, we just got done adjusting or polishing our little angles here on our extractor, and the last thing we need to do, which is probably still one of the most important, is to adjust that extractor where it's got the proper tension when it's in the slide. It's got the proper tension on the case. So what we're going to do is we're going to put it in the vise, and we're going to at two different places. And we're going to slightly tap it with the mallet to get a little bit of a bend in the extractor. Not a whole lot, but it's going to be ever so slight. So we're going to go ahead. And what we're going to do is up as close as we can up here. We're going to clamp it.
You don't want to hold on to it by the hook itself. Because
No, right.
You
You want to stay back away from that. You don't need it real tight. Just snug in there to where it's not going to be moving around on you. And you can get plastic nylon mallet or a rawhide mallet or anything that's soft that's not going to put a lot of dings and nicks on it or be so hard that it might break it. But all we're going to do is just You want to make sure you want to hold it here with your thumb slightly too, because if you wouldn't, chances are it'll probably just shear off right there. We're just going to slightly, as you bounce on it, you can see it start to bend a little bit. It'll stay. You don't want a whole lot. And then we're going to move it up just ahead of this little notch right here. And pretty much do the same thing.
And you advise keeping your thumb there so you don't
Yeah,
break it.
right. You want to always support that there. And then take it out, and as you can also probably see, it's no longer straight. It's got a little bit of curve in it.
How much curve do you need, or does that change from gun to gun?
Well, that'll change from gun to gun. Really what we're looking for is the tension, the way it feels when you slip a case underneath there. I'm sure this is probably too much, but that way I can put it in the slide and be able to work it a little bit slightly here and put it back in and check it with the dummy round underneath the hook. So we're going to go ahead and take just a hair of that off. We're going to push it down in the slide. Again, we're going to put our slide stop underneath there. Take a little bit of to hold the extractor in the slide where it's going to be. Take your dummy round, again put it down in the slide. And it's a little rough. It slides underneath there. It'll hold the round, but it's still just too much tension. It's rough. It's jumping around. It's
And that's because of the angle, right?
right. But it's got too much tension on it also. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull that back out. And all I'm doing now is just leaving it in the slide, bringing it about halfway in here, somewhere between the two places that we held it to bend it, just very, very slightly. Just, you won't even feel hardly any movement at all. You'll just feel the extractor give just a little bit. Reposition it in the slide. Needs to be straight. Again, get your dummy round. Slide it up underneath there. It's a little better. I think it's still a little too much. You want about 4 pounds of tension on that, which you know, as many as we do around here, you know, we just pretty much do it by hand. Again, I'm going to slightly. Again, you can see I'm bending the opposite way of the way I bent it the first time in the vise. Take just a little more off. Put your slide stop back in. Put your dummy round. That feels about right. Feels good. It's not too hard. It's not too light. But if it's properly adjusted, it's enough and not too little the tension, you should be able to turn that up, turn it upside down, and that round's not moving. It's not falling out. It's not moving any at all, hardly at all. And if it feels smooth going in, it's not hanging up or jumping around, it should feed up underneath that extractor hook like that in the gun. But the real test will be when you put the gun together and actually shoot it, if it'll extract it.
So
This will get you real close. This will get you real
smoothness,
close.
You can kind of feel
Right.
that comes into play when you polish it
Right.
and took off a
Right.
little bit of metal.
Yeah, get those angles more radiused and get some of the stuff out of the way. Where the only thing that extractor's got pressure on is that case rim right there up against the side of the breech face. It feels smooth and it feels like it ought to be just about right.
Okay, what we've got here is a set of Wilson number 61DN. This is the deluxe sight. These happen to have the 3 dots in them. Of course, these are available with or without dots. what we're going to do is we're going to install these sights on this slide. The first thing that we should do is we always use a smooth jawed vise here in the shop, so it makes it easier. We'll just put a little of this thick paper tape on the sides of the slide so that we don't mess anything up. Then we're going to take a padded punch. We're going to knock the front side, the original front side, out of the slide. If you don't wrap a little something around your punch, you'll scar your slide up on the underside here. What we're going to do is we're going to knock that out.
Out it comes, huh?
And out it comes. Okay, at this point you can take a little look and see, how your front sight's going to fit in there. Actually, go ahead and drive it into place if you want to. Then you just knock that little fella right back out. At this point, we'll take a little quick trip over to the vise and actually bevel the underside of the front side hole.
Why is that making a difference?
Well, actually what that does is whenever you use the swaging tool, it gives you more material from the part of the front side that's going to be swaged. Actually makes a brad on the underside.
Yeah.
And in conjunction with a little Loctite, the new front sight will, basically be on there forever. The only way it can get off is if the front side actually fractures, which never happens.
Okay.
We'll move over here and
That's what we can use.
we're going to use the Fordham here for just a second. Get us a pair of safety glasses and a very small round stone. What we're going to do is we're going to reach in here and just bevel the hole with this. Doesn't take much.
Just go ahead and show us what it's supposed to look like. What do you got there? A little bevel?
Just a little bevel that we've put on the underside, and that'll be, it doesn't take a whole lot, just, barely enough to really break the edge to where you can really get some extra material swaged in that off of the front side. Degrease.
Yeah.
That's a little bit of degreaser. We're going to use that to make sure that our Loctite sticks real well. And what we'll do is we'll put just a little bit of Loctite in there. Just lay our front sight right in the hole. Tap it into place. At this point we'll get a MMC staking tool, which is available from Brownells and works real well. It's basically the only way that we've ever put front sights on here because it does work so well. And then of course it comes with a little block that sits on top of the front sight. At this point you'd snug this down real well, but not too much or you'll smash the top of your front sight. And what we'll do is we'll put this in here, put just a little drop of oil on this. And drive this in.
Now, where does that make it fit?
What this is doing, it's the little block that we just drove in has a channel that tapers up and actually swages the underside of the front sight. At this point we can undo this. Pull the block out. Using a padded hammer, you can get it about halfway off, and then it comes right out. Take a little rag and wipe out the excess Loctite that has run out. At this point, what you would run into is extra swaged material on the underside, which would prevent the bushing from going in. Okay, we'll go back over to the vise for just a second and take a little stone and grind out that excess, where that your bushing will go back in the slide where it's supposed to. Okay, we've moved back over to the vise now. What we're going to do is gently grind off the excess material that we've got in the slide. Whoop. There we go. Okay, what we've done here, we've cleaned this off and should have it where with the bushing will go back in the slide. If the gun's not going to be refinished, which in this case it's not, you can take a little cold blue and refinish that little shiny part, or leave it there, whichever, as it's not visible on the outside. I might mention that a lot of people really don't know that swaging the front sights in is the best way to do that, because in so many cases a lot of the front sights are cast, and when they're swaged it just doesn't work out properly, which can result in a fracture of the front sight, or a lot of people think it's the fault of the swaging when it's actually the fault of the sight. Our front sights, or all of our sights, are machined from bar stock with the grain structure of the metal running properly, to where that you basically end up with a unbreakable front sight. That pretty much, after you get that done, unless you want to color the inside of that with the cold blue, well, that pretty much takes care of the front sight. Okay, we'll stay over here at the vise and stick this back in the vise like so. Get us a punch. What we'll do now is knock the Colt rear sight. We'll use a steel punch to do this. It's much easier. Not going to use the steel or the original Colt sight anymore anyway. So. That gone. Chuck that back in the box. We'll see how this is going to work. Okay. Most of the time, your dovetails and the Colt slides are pretty consistent. This one here, for example, it's a little loose. Well, it'll go up to here, and that'll allow us a little room to where we can open the dovetail up, and should be able to drive that little fella in there and be nice and tight. You want to be sure and take the set screw out to where that you don't scuff the underside of your slide whenever you're driving the new side in. We'll take a dovetail file at this point, and preferably, if everything works properly, all you have to open up is the top edges of the dovetail. So we'll do that and see how this turns out. Can we see this right here?
Yeah.
We'll do this other side first.
So you have a triangle file there, huh?
Well, what we've got a little dovetail file that's also available from Brownells, and we'll just lay it in there and come up against and tip it out just a little bit. Not removing very much because a little bit of material goes a long ways. Most of the time I prefer to use a little piece of wood rather than, brass or something like that, because they do mar the finish on the part that you're wanting to put in. Okay. At that point we can back up and put our set screw in.
Some people like to go ahead and put some Mile-Lock.
And at this point, if you can take it out, hold it up to the light, and check to see if you have any light gaps in your dovetail between the fit of the slide and the rear sight. Some people, if they do have a little light gap there, like to just really not to seal it or really not to make it stick, but to close up the gap and to help hold the sight on there too. Why, just drop just a little bit of Loctite and it'll naturally flow into the open spaces under the sight. Okay, what we've done here, we've installed the sights. We can go ahead and peel the tape off the slide, bearing in mind that if you do all of this sight installation real carefully, the new sights, fixed sights, can basically be installed without any damage to the finish. By using the paper tape and the smooth vice jaws, we've eliminated the possibility of getting any scratches on the sides of the slide. Actually, the only place that we've cut any material or disturbed the finish in any way is on the underside. That can be taken care of quite easily just by taking a little Birchwood or Brownells Oxbow blue, which seems to work the best of any that we've been able to get. And
Brush that on?
and just brush that on there real nice. Wipe that out, and it's basically just like it was when we started, except you have a new set of 3-dot sights.
Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to open up the mag well for faster reloads. We're going to bevel the inside edge. This cutter right here will bevel that inside edge approximately 60 degrees. I believe Brownell sells the cutters that will do that. This particular one here we've made, and it works real well. There are other various different angles, whatever you decide to go with. But 60 degrees is about the average, I think. We're going to run this mill in here, and we're going to bevel the inside of the mag well to get some of that corner metal out of the way, and then also we'll be putting a mainspring housing in here and cutting down into the mainspring housing with the Dremel tool. So what we're going to do right now, I've got this frame in here in the milling machine vise, and I've got it into where the butt of the gun here is level up in the air, both sides. And if they're not exactly the same, just cut the difference in half, get it close. And we're going to run this mill in here and see if we can get some of this material out. Okay, we just milled that out to get a lot of the material out of the way. Like I said, later we're going to go in there with the Dremel tool, get our mainspring housing in. We're going to just contour this in so it all flows into the mag well to get rid of any sharp edges that might help fast reloads. And this is normally what we do also with the mag well on, which we call it super butt or super funnel on a lot of our guns, especially the super grade gets that. So we get this off of here, we'll be putting the mainspring housing in it and getting it in the vise and starting to take the Dremel tool and contour that around all the edges and get it looking a lot better. Okay, we just got off the mill after beveling the mag well here. You can get a shot of this at about 60-degree angle. We beveled around there. We beveled it all the way around. And what we've done now is I went ahead and put a steel mainspring housing in here. And I left one side beveled so you could see the difference. And I went ahead and took one of these coarse stones with a Dremel tool and just laid it down in there at an angle, and pretty much whatever angle you want to go at. Went pretty much straight down into the frame and cut into the mainspring housing, not into the pin hole. You can kind of eyeball that, I think. And just kind of dish that out to relieve some area so when the magazine goes up in there, it's not going to catch on that big flat area we had right there. It used to be flat and square, and we've cut that all out, including the magazine or the mainspring housing. We went on over to the side. And what we're trying to eliminate here with this stone, or maybe a little smaller one, is eliminating this ridge right here and just basically just flowing all that together, just contouring that down there so it just funnels into the mag well. No sharp edges for the magazine to catch on. Open that up so easy reloads. You can see we've already done that here.
Maybe mention that double angle edge across from cold steel attempt.
Yeah.
Trying to double the mag well.
Yeah, as you can also see this double angle right here. This is the cut that I made, and this cut in here is done at the Colt factory, and that's kind of their attempt to do somewhat of a mag well relieving. And it shouldn't give you any trouble here. This is normally something that we do. This super butt or super funnel, we use our mag well and put on there and do this same thing, which takes care of all the edges in here, and then you've also got a wider surface area out here with your mag well to accept your magazine on reloads. You can see here where we've taken the stone and we've run up into the Colt cut, taken care of that ridge right here and blended it on down into the bevel that I made on the mill. Also, another important point we want to point out, if I can get both of these up here, these corners right here, we went ahead and took those out, just got those out of the way with dishing this out and funneled that on in there, and that helps a lot on catching the magazine as it goes up into the frame. So basically what we're doing is we're just opening that all up as much as we can. And it's up to you how much ever you want to open it. I think I opened this up here about to the maximum. I wouldn't want to get any more come down with the stone because you're going to come out of the side of your frame. So you can see how much we milled out. You can see how far we went here on the funneling with the stone. And then if you wanted to get one of our mag wells and do this, this would be a finished product here. You see the difference with the mag well on, with the mag well off. Basically we've done the same thing, just not used the part over here. We funneled that on out and it's blended all up. It's real smooth, no sharp edges all the way around. Corners taken out of it. It's a good, open, smooth area to insert a mag well or insert a magazine on speed reload. Does a real good job and it works real well.
Okay, what we've got here now is our Commander slide again, and we're going to go through the installation of our night sights. Okay, we've got our stainless steel Commander slide here, and we're going to set it up in the mill and machine a dovetail in the front of it for our dovetail Wilson night sights.
Okay. We got just ordinary paper in the...
Yeah, I put some paper in there to keep from marring the sides of the slide itself. I'm going to level off the top of the slide here. Okay, the cutter we'll be using for doing this is a 300 thousandths by 60 degree dovetail cutter. Okay, what I was doing right there was finding the front of the slide so I can move the cutter back 90 thousandths.
And you're dialed in with one back, right?
Yeah. I run it back 90 thousandths. I'll lock it down. Use a piece of paper to slip under my cutter to find the top of the slide. Okay, now I've found the top of the slide so I can go down my depth of 65 thousandths. Lock the table down. Now we'll machine our cut. That ought to do it. Okay, this is our tapered cone dual port barrel system and our new front sight for it, and it'll virtually install exactly the same manner as what I just done to the Commander slide.
So you just go ahead and lock that into the vise and just cut a
It's
dovetail
just-
right there.
Yes, just cut your dovetail in it, just virtually the same as what I did to the Commander slide just now. You notice I have the sides of the slide taped up to keep from marring it as I install these sights. Need to cut just a little bit off of the existing dovetail cut on the top to keep from on the top edge to keep from turning the curl out of your front sight or your rear sight whenever you drive it through.
And that's kind of curved, so you're just keeping the same radius, right?
Yeah.
How tight should that be?
It should be fairly snug. Okay, the bottom edge of our sight is catching on the top of the slide, so we're going to have to remove our sight.
You're going to pound it out over
File is just a small flap in the back portion of our slide right here.
You're just taking that down a little bit, right?
Yes.
If they mess up the finish, they can't be glued.
All right, what are you going to do?
Okay, we're going to try to drive him back on. You'll notice I'm using a wooden dowel rod for a driver rather than any kind of metal, because if you mar the finish on the night sights, you won't be able to get any kind of refinish or bluing on them or anything after the night sight inserts are installed in them. The wooden rod also gives you less shock whenever you're driving the sight and less chance of busting one of the inserts. Okay, the dovetail on this particular slide was a little bit on the small side, so we're going to have to open it up just a little bit with a 60-degree dovetail file. Shouldn't take much. A little shot of oil on it before you try to drive the sight. Makes them a lot easier to install. Now we'll install the front sight. We'll also have to break the edges on it as we did the rear one. Our front one also needs opened up just a little. If you take care of whenever you're machining the front dovetail and whenever you're installing the sights in your vise, you can get by with this without refinishing the slide. when drifting this front side into place, you need to be sure and only strike it on the lower part and not up on the blade section, or you might damage your insert. And there's our finished slide with the night sights installed.
Let's look right up at, yeah, he's gonna get shot that way. Now turn it around so the barrel faces right down the hole there. All right, and hold on, he's focusing. And that's how it's supposed to look.
Turn the slide around and give it a back feed.
Yeah, there you go. Wait, hold on, he's focusing.
Okay, another bit of custom work we do here at Wilson's that's requested quite a bit on guns, whether it be competition or carry, is fitting in the beaver tail grip safety. And we have 2 or 3 different types. We have the standard beaver tail grip safety, which is a number 66, and we have the high grip beaver tail safety, which is a little bit higher grip. This one's already fitted on the gun. And the advantages of this part here, first of all, it allows the felt recoil to be spread out across the web of the hand, and feel better when you shoot the gun. You get a little more control, and also being the higher grip, the gun will sit down lower in the hand, and therefore you can have more control on it. Better control in rapid shooting. Like I said, the part we're going to be fitting is our 298 blue high grip beaver tail. One of the new features on this part here is this little pad down here that we've added on. A lot of people, they'll see those in the catalog, or they'll see them on a friend's gun or something. They'll say, boy, I don't think I'd like that feel in my hand. But believe you me, you don't feel it. You don't. And the idea of it is positive depression of the grip safety when you grab hold of the gun out of the holster. Little added extra height there to where, like I said, when you grab the gun, it's going to be depressed all the time. A lot of people, they want to cut that leg off or pin their grip safeties, which we don't do any of that. It's not a good idea to do that. You defeated the safety feature of the gun. But this helps a lot on making sure that beaver tail is depressed every time you grip the gun. So take our little Commander here, and there's some frame alteration. You can see here that this tang right back here, the beaver tail will have to be fitted up to in order for the holes to line up for your thumb safety to go in. We're going to have to machine some of that off. And we've got our own little part we've made that we can put in there and grind that off or mill that off to where we can get close to start fitting that part on there. Brownells also sells a jig that you can install in the frame and grind right down to it, and it'll get you real close. This just the same way. But I've got a frame here that we've already machined down and got close, and basically it's going to get you to the point where you can put the beaver tail in the gun and start to get it. As you can see, it's approaching. It's still a long ways off, but it's approaching the holes lining up to put your thumb safety through there. And what you want to accomplish by doing this is after you get that machined off, you want to slightly on both sides of the frame is a file that contour and that round right there to get that beaver tail to swing freely and to operate in order to block your trigger movement in there and work right on the gun. Now, we've got this gun over here that's already been fitted up. You can see the holes line up real good in the frame. The thumb safety that we're going to use on this gun, which is our extended number 6 safety, slides in. It works real free. The beaver tail's free. It doesn't bind anywhere. And again, we're talking about that beaver tail swinging on there, kind of like a round hinge. And when you take your time on something like this, all these things, we stress to take your time and fit, because once you file off too much metal, you may have big gaps in here, which are not very pleasing to look at and sometimes hinder the operation of the part. You just take it slow and stay with the contour on the back of that frame on both sides, and you should end up with a good fitting beaver tail. Works real good, looks good on the gun. Okay, we're over here at the bench, and we got our frame in the vise. We're getting ready to take off this material back here to fit the grip safety up. And earlier I told you about a jig that Brownell sells, and also a little jig that we've made. And all our jig is
A little wire jack.
what it is. It's a Colt grip safety, just a standard Commander grip safety, that we've taken the back of it off to a depth that we've found that gets us close enough, like we talked about earlier, taking off that material to just get started, to get the holes to start lining up. Now, we know you probably don't have one of these at home, but when you get your beaver tail fit, you might get one of these and put it in the frame and grind this spur off down to close to where your beaver tail comes into the frame. That way, if you wanted to fit any more, or anything, you would have the grip safety modified to where you could use it again. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in the frame and show you how to take off some of this material. Now, earlier I talked about milling this off or filing this off. What we do here at Wilson's is we have a vertical belt sander that we can put this jig in the frame, and all this is a worn out Colt thumb safety. And what I mean by worn out is I've taken off the little pad area here that blocks the sear, just so it'll swing free on the frame. And also this little pin right here, I've taken some polishing cloth and tapered the end of it slightly so it'll help start in the holes, and reduce the diameter of this ever so slightly, just so when it slips in, it's free. It's not going to hang up on anything. It's got plenty of clearance. Just to have something in there to also not to file on a good thumb safety that might be fitting to this gun. So we've got our modified grip safety in here for a guide. Got our Colt thumb safety in there. I'm going to take a piece of tape, just lay around here to keep that grip safety intact so it doesn't float around. And we know you probably all don't have a belt sander at home, so we're going to use a file, which is plenty good to do. It might take a little more time, but for somebody that's not fit a beaver tail, that's probably a good idea, so you can take it real slow and take off just how you need to take off. So what we're going to do is we're going to lay this file on here. This is just a 8-inch mill bastard file. It takes off quite a bit of metal at a time. And we're just going to file straight across here. I think you can see down in here the difference in the material that we're going to have to remove. We want to remove it down close to this area right here, close down to our guide. So you can pretty well get on it and take material off until you start getting close. And stay kind of too with the contour and the roundness of this area right here. We've got that just like we want it to accept the beaver tail. So we're going to go ahead and get some material off. Ooh. Last one you saw us, we had the frame in the vise, working on to get the beaver tail to fit down into the frame. And I had my little homemade jig in there to know where to stop, taking off the back of the tang. And as you can see, we've removed the material down to just above that area. You can see that pretty close, actually. And we're going to get to where we can get our part, and it will start to fit into the frame. Fits up pretty good, but still I think you can see the holes are not quite lined up yet. We still need to bring that beaver tail on down in the frame still keeping our contour here, gradually, gently, a little bit at a time. So what we're going to do there is we're going to take that worn out thumb safety that I had earlier, and I told you about the tapered end. That's going to help us get started in those holes. We're going to force that in there, keeping the beaver tail down, and we're going to take a soft mallet, or rawhide mallet, or plastic mallet. We're going to rest that down on our leg, and we're just going to rock that part back and forth real rapidly. What we're going to do is we're going to get that to make marks on the back of the frame. And then when we take the part off, we'll see where to file and where not to file, and still keep the contour. So we're going to give it a couple of whacks here and see what happens. You want to go ahead and do that to both sides. Safety on the other side. I think you can see here, making some marks down here on one side, not too much on the other.
Yeah, hold it still right there. Yeah, good.
And up here on this side, and up here. Now, if you have trouble seeing the marks, or you get down to where, when it gets kind of close, sometimes it'll be to where it won't make many marks. You can get you a black magic marker and paint that all right there, put your part on, whack it back and forth, and where it rubs off the shiny spots is where you need to file. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take our number 2 cut, pretty fine cut, but it removes metal pretty good, wide pillar file. We're going to hold this frame. Let's do it this way first. You have to get a good grip on it to where you can control your filing, because it's real critical that you take off going this way but maintain the levelness of the frame this way. So we're going to just start in here, just filing with that contour. Be careful not to get back in here on the frame and make any unnecessary marks. As you recall, we had marks pretty high up here and down here, so I'm going to concentrate up top first. I'm going to go on around. Again, just take your time, and the more time you take and the more careful you are, the better beaver tail you're going to have fit. And just switch to the other side, whatever's comfortable. If you need to put it in a vise, we'll put it in a vise. It's just easier for me to put it up against the bench. And also inside here, every once in a while, you want to check and make sure sharp edge, as you go down, that edge in there will get sharper. You just want to knock that out of there, so it'll stay out of the inside of the beaver tail where it hinges, and it'll be free. You won't have to worry about that hanging up. And then we'll go back to putting the part back on. We'll hit him some more. Another thing probably to watch for is that the inside of the slide might be rubbing on the side of your beaver tail. This one's not too bad, except for right there it'll also make marks. You see some of those, so get your file and just take those off. You can go back and see where it's made some marks again. Right there. Not so much over here, so that's why I spend a little more time filing over here than I do here. We'll just continue this process back and forth of filing, putting the part back on, and hitting it to make marks until we get our holes to line up, and that beaver tail's in, the holes will start to line up. And whatever safety you're fitting on the gun, whether it be an ambidextrous safety or extended combat safety or Colt, whatever you want to keep on it or put on it, will fit in there. what we want to get is we want to get the beaver tail to work to swing free, the thumb safety to be free and not catch anywhere. Okay, I've been working on this thing for 15-20 minutes or so, and we got her just about there. Just gonna hit it a few more times and file it, make sure it works real free and swings real good. Just about do it here. A few more marks. Get rid of. Make sure these are edges broke in there. Let's see what we got now. Okay, now the safety we're going to be using on this gun, which is a stainless extended combat safety, the number 6. What we're going to be using, I want to make sure that fits in there free. You can see that's pretty free with the beaver tail in, and also the beaver tail that we've got on it swings pretty good and free. And you can also look around here. You can see there's a slight gap there, but you can't be perfect. That just, fouled a little bit out there, but you can see it's good and snug around there, but it still swings. Pretty snug all the way around. Swings real free. Everything's in good shape. So basically, your beaver tail is fit to the frame. As far as the material removal back here, the only other thing you might consider is if the beaver tail sticks up anywhere along here, which this one fits down pretty good, if there's any frame sharp edges, there usually always is on this side. There's a little bit right there. But I don't think it's enough to, if you wanted to leave it like that, it wouldn't give you any trouble. But if you want to go to the extra time to take a large half-round file and file that down, contour that into the beaver tail, well, we do, that on most all of our guns here, especially ones that we refinish. Just contour that all around there, and you can come up with something that looks kind of like this right here. We can see when the beaver tail's down, there's no sharp edges at all. The line of the beaver tail follows the line of the frame pretty much exactly on both sides. There's no holes or gaps. It's all smooth right there. Put your hand on there, any movement or anything, it's not going to snag you or anything. So basically, that's it for fitting the beaver tail.